Good morning, everyone. This morning we're talking about getting into property and spotting the absolute bargain, because it is confusing out there. There's properties out there that are selling for absolute premiums, and there's properties out there that are just plain old bargains. And we're going to teach you this morning how to spot them and why this is happening. Stay tuned. Michael, this is your topic. This is your baby.
Good morning.
You're passionate about this.
I am.
I'm
very passionate about it. I'm doing well. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thanks, bud. Good. Good weekend. Beautiful weather.
Yes, can't complain. When it's sunny, we can't complain these days.
Big time. And hearts go out to all the flood-affected people in New South Wales as well. It doesn't looks like it's tough times. Weird weather.
Very strange. Very strange. So today's topic: how to spot a bargain in top-performing property, and it is something I was very interested to talk about today with you, because obviously it's a very talked about subject with pretty much every single buyer or vendor we're speaking with at the moment. And I just wanted to debunk some of the myths today, and also sort of dig into it a little bit more, so we can sort of understand in this market that pretty much every property doesn't perform the same, and that there is sort of almost micro markets within each market, and case by case, what happens with each individual property.
There's some unicorns. There's some incredible ones. Now, tell me, when we're looking at the market, so let's use a cross section of a couple of different suburbs. If people want to throw a suburb out, we'll entertain that as well. But let's start off with DY as an example. We're looking at DY. We're looking at capital growth, or we're looking at capital growth. At the moment, it's been negative, the capital growth in the last 12 months. But there's been 10 years of some real positive, and it's been different between houses and units, believe it or not. So let's try to understand it.
Yes, well, actually, there was some interesting statistics before that Mark sent across to me. So over the past 10 years, and this is not an average, but how much properties have grown in total over the past 10 years, houses have gone up by 140% over the past 10 years. And how much have units gone up by?
90.
So there's big difference there. Big difference.
Yeah, it's actually pretty interesting, because it did feel like the rise of the house was much more aggressive than the rise of the unit, particularly of late. So when you break that down a little bit, you start thinking, hang on a sec, why is the market doing that? But people definitely through COVID favoured the house more than they favoured the unit. If anything, they probably tried to get out of the unit and try to get into the house. That was the most common move.
Yes, I agree. I think that was what a lot of people were pushing for, and that's what sort of pushed those, especially those entry-level house prices, because I think individually they were the ones that moved the most over that period of time. And it's interesting to see now in a market that's coming off, obviously looking at how much houses are coming off versus units, the quicker they go up, the quicker they come down as well. And obviously houses are now probably feeling it a bit more than even units in terms of that correction in pricing.
So, actually, I wonder if I can bring that up, Michael. Can I see if I can bring those two little puppies up? I don't know possible.
If anyone can, you can.
If anyone can, I can. Let's have a look. There you go. Oh, no, can't do it. It's a background. It's a layout. What about if I go that? Nah, I'm not going to do it. Okay.
No. That's all right.
Get a little bit of a feel, but yeah, so Michael, when someone's looking out there at the moment, or as a buyer, do you want to buy the unit that has underperformed over the last 10 years because it's got space to move up, or do you want to buy the house that's overperformed in the last 10 years because it may level out and may correct a little bit more aggressively downwards? What would you do?
Good question. Am I looking as an investor or as an owner-occupier? Because that'll affect my answer.
Let's do both.
Okay. So if I'm an investor, the biggest thing I'm looking for at the moment, and this is me, like some people might be looking for different, but I'm looking for how well, because the bottom line is, as we can see, 90%, 140%, properties on the Northern Beaches still perform very, very strongly. But I'm looking for how can I maximize my cash flow so that I can service this loan and hold on to the property and hopefully be able to buy more into the future. So for an investor, that's what I'm looking for. And when you're looking at that, I think some of your more entry-level properties, some of the ones with scratches on them, as per se, that maybe haven't performed as strongly but are going to provide a better yield, might be a better way to at least get into the market as opposed to paying the premium for that unicorn.
It's pretty interesting. Like I've always been a bit of a fan of the old strata unit, and I think houses for an investor, for me personally, were a little bit harder to maintain. But I've got to tell you, I'm not sad about when I look at units in my particular area. And again, I think one of the guys just brought up Surrey Hills. We're going to have a look at that in a second. But when I bring up those houses, I've got another way to bring up that graph because I love a graph. All right, so that's units, right?
Yeah.
So that's units in DY. DY is a good representation.
Yeah, 90% up in 10 years.
And to give you an idea, DY has got as much volume as Sydney, more volume than Sydney CBD. It's a big suburb. But see this number down here that you can't probably see it, the little green one down there. That's that 90% we're talking about over a 10-year period. And then 146%, sorry, Michael, was what houses have done in the area over a 10-year period.
So it's funny, it just shows you go, well, obviously houses perform more strongly capital growth wise, and take out what's happening in this market now, but over the next 10 years, does that mean houses are going to continue to outperform units? You might be thinking that as well. But then on the flip side, your holding costs for a house in terms of your land values are so high at the moment. The amount of land tax an investor will be paying, this is on the investor side at the moment, an investor will be paying on a house maybe might offset that.
You've touched a big topic. Yep.
And it's the
Can you say that again?
Well, houses have outperformed units for capital growth, but how much you're going to be paying on land tax, when you actually go down and crunch the numbers, you might be surprised on how much it actually offsets your capital growth. Money in your pocket at the end of the day after 10 years, if you were to sell, how much you would actually end up with.
Yep. So for anyone that's watching that doesn't understand land tax, if you're not living in the property, the government's going to put their hand out for a thing called land tax. They'll put their hand out once you own a certain amount of property, i.e. they're going to give you a house up your sleeve, or they're going to give you 2 units up your sleeve, maybe 3 units. Then once you get over the threshold, which I think is about circa 900 grand this year, once you get over that threshold, then they're going to charge you a land tax. Now, when we're talking about spotting a bargain in this particular market, I think you've just uncovered a ripper of a cost that's going to carry with you for the next 10 or 20 years of that property ownership, or even 30 years, depending on how much you own it. It's a rolling 3-year average, the way they do land tax. So the way they assess land tax is not the value of the property per se, it's the value of general assessment. So it's more of a conservative approach. With a house that's in the Northern Beaches, which may be worth $2 million, the value of general may have an assessment value. You can Google the assessment value, by the way, and it comes up, and just step into it, of about 1.1 million for a house, whereas a $2 million unit, for instance, will only attract about a $400,000 or $500,000 VGA, value of general assessment. So what you got to watch out, and why we say this, is if you're an investor, you could be loaded with 20, 30, 40,000 worth of land tax every single year. Now, if you're paying 30 grand of land tax every year because you own 2 factories or 2 houses or whatever it may be, that's almost $500,000 that's going to compound to. And these numbers are really going to change over the next, because those new assessments are coming out in December, and those are really radically going to change on that rolling 3-year average. This is probably going to be the highest impact rolling 3-year average we have ever seen for land tax. It could be the greatest hike we've ever seen in Australia for land tax. Even though property's gone correct a little bit now, it's a rolling 3-year average. Good one to watch.
Yeah, I think you said it brilliantly. And for someone as an investor, let's say looking at a house that entry-level homes maybe were 2.1 million at the peak of the market, and they're going, this is great, now I can pick up an entry-level house right at the bottom end of the market for maybe 1.6 million, and you go, and this is great, there's a lot of potential capital growth, as we can see with it. Over the course of 10, 15 years, if you're having $500,000 of your capital growth eaten into by land tax, plus your holding costs and so forth, it greatly offsets that capital gain. And it's something you just got to be aware of, because even if you're making a ton of money on the other end when you're going to sell, you might be cash flow poor during the meantime, and it could really chop into those profit margins.
So when people read the headline today, how to spot a bargain, everyone automatically registered property purchase price.
Yeah.
You looked at cash flow, you looked at that, and you looked at cash flow as well. And I think that's a golden goose for a lot of people out there today to keep an eye out on for. Luke Moroney said, did you hear about Queensland land tax backflip? No. We might bring Luke on to have a chat about that next couple of days. And yeah. Lisa says that you've got a new look, Michael.
I do. I do. It's a bloke thing, you know. You won't know. I've gone back to
look at that.
Yeah, I've lost about 5 years.
Wow, you look fresh. You look fresh.
I look young again. I decided I wanted to age 5 years backwards. So.
Wow. All right. So.
But yeah, what you just
before we close up, can we summarize a couple the show? How to spot a bargain and how to spot a top performing property. We got the bargain bit, but what about the top performing bit, Michael?
Top performing.
We're talking off air about that.
Yeah, you pretty much pick up what we're saying there in terms of the bargain, and you flip it around the other way, which is and like you said, it's not just purchase price. It's the property you're buying, it's your outgoing, it's your cash flow, it's your future capital growth potential. There's so many other things behind it as well. So when you're buying top performing property, yes, you might be paying a higher price for it, but there's so many underlying factors that could make it a great investment for you over the next 10, 15 years. Once again, we're talking more on the investment side, but I still think something that's just straightforward, has good cash flow, historically has performed well, you can't go wrong with. And obviously, in the example of a strata unit, low land tax.
And what we have noticed is sometimes there's a unicorn sale. We had one for 21.5 million that we sold in Manly. Lisa and you did a great job selling it. That was just such an all-round tick all the boxes, that when it came to selling in a market that's not a seller's market but a buyer's market, it still did awesomely well. How does that work?
Because it's a unicorn. There's only one of it, and so price-wise, they're always going to outperform whatever you might think the market should do. They always tend to outperform it. But going back to, I guess, in terms of spotting a bargain top performing property, for that investor, that's a great investment. He's land banked on that property. He's not too worried about it. It's not a great yield, but he's okay with that because long term, he knows he's going to make great money on it. because once he goes to sell it again, it's always going to be that unicorn, or he may never sell it. However, for someone, let's say that maybe let's say you're at that level and $21 million is your complete nest egg, and you bought that one property and that was your only investment, that'd probably be a shocking investment for you. Horrible cash flow. You tied up all in one asset, and there's not really too much you can do with it. So it's funny, just one amazing property for someone is not necessarily an amazing property for someone else. And I think it's so much of it comes back to your personal situation
as well. And that's something that we're, with these sales, again, I'll repeat myself, we are seeing stuff in the market that has not eroded in price and on that capital growth. And that's, you know what, scarcity. I love the word scarcity, because when there's scarcity in the market or low supply of something, that's always going to contribute it to doing a little bit better. When there's an oversupply or a glut of a particular type of property, that's always going to really, really hammer and erode that pricing on the property. So I think if you want to look for something that's a bit of a unicorn, scarcity is the key to finding something out there with a property at the moment.
Simple supply and demand.
Very simple. Very simple.
Lisa.
All right. Well, that's a show, and I think we've brought in a couple of things now. Watch that land tax, guys and girls. Watch that land tax, because it could bite you on the bum, and it could affect your decision making when you're buying your next property, particularly if it's being an investment property. I think that have a look out for land tax, and have a look at that 10-year rolling average on that property that you're going to be buying, be it a unit or a house on the suburb. You can always flick it over to us. We'll have a look at it. Hey, someone asked me about Surrey Hills. Can I just bring that up before we go?
Of course.
Because I don't want to let that person down. Okay. What do you reckon Surrey Hills has done?
Well,
we got units or houses?
Well, wouldn't it be predominantly houses in Surrey Hills? I'm not sure. I should know. Units, both.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to guess.
This one, you're going to be surprised.
Yep. Do you want me to guess first?
Yeah.
10 years, let's go 115%.
Da. 10 years has done.
Struggling to read, if you can tell the viewers out there, Mark.
88%.
88%. There we go. Win for DY.
Surrey Hills, I thought would have been a really good performer. Hey, if anyone doesn't know these percentages that we're talking about, if you hit 100%, you've doubled. If you hit 80%, you know, it's 88% from the initial money that you put in. If you're hitting 200%, you've doubled and doubled again. So I think it's, believe it or not, and I want to go out on this one, believe it or not, property values double every 10 years. What does that mean? 100% every 10 years. What does that mean? Surrey Hills DY units are pretty much on track. What does that mean? DY houses are not on track. They've exploded. They've had too much capital growth. They've done 140% capital growth. So when you're looking at your suburbs, have a look if they've exploded and overloaded, or have a look if they've underperformed, and have a good think about that when you're buying it.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
See you guys.